Alrighty, this will be the People News, not an attorney. Okay, not giving legal advice. Okay, educational purpose only. And the reason why I say that is so you can think outside the box, right? Never look straight forward. Always look around you to be able to protect yourself by any means necessary. All right. Use that Second Amendment. Arm yourself with knowledge. Quit misconstruing the Second Amendment. All right. So, I know of this lady. I don't watch too much TV or anything like that, but I know of her. Like some of the shows she was in, and so she's a really good actress, as far as I'm aware of all the actresses out there. And I don't know her politics. However, I'm with her. It don't matter Democrat or Republican. Okay, uh, the government has took control of our rights, and it goes back into you need to teach your offspring, y'all. And you know why I know you're not teaching them? Because I watch videos every day giving up their rights. You to invoke the Fourth Amendment. You to invoke the Fourth Amendment. And need be, you invoke your First Amendment. All right? And when you're in that courtroom, you invoke that Sixth and Seventh Amendment. And then you invoke that Ninth Amendment and that 10th Amendment. Okay? And if you've been caused harm, loss, and damages because you was sent to jail first before seeing a magistrate of probable cause, well, then you need to invoke the Eighth Amendment. Because you shouldn't be in that jail without that probable cause, without a warrant. This is not a complicated issue, unless you're a subject. All right, let's go.
We are witnessing a total political system failure in America. If you're anything like me, you may find yourself constantly overwhelmed by everything that's wrong with politics. And when I say politics, I'm not talking about Democrats or Republicans. I'm talking about the flaws that exist in our political system, regardless of which party is in power. And I know it's hard to talk about politics these days, but look, the government is ours. We pay for it, so it needs to work for us. And right now it doesn't. And I mean, it really doesn't.
And I'm going to stress it out. We got to use our political powers as one of the people. We got to instruct them. Okay? We got to assemble. We got to petition. And we got to direct them in the right way. Because if we don't, what does the courts call it? Silence of acquiescence and a tacit agreeing to their terms. And meanwhile, they are in silence acquiescence and they tacitly agree to our terms by not answering our questions. However, they got this alleged authority. Well, wait a minute. Am I supposed to be one of the people or am I supposed to be a subject? I need to challenge that jurisdiction. Am I on the Texas Republic or am I in the corporation body?
So what's going on here? Is it Russian meddling in social media? Is it him? Is it her? No. Those two were the least popular presidential candidates since they began keeping track of such things. Only 4% of Americans have a great deal of confidence in Congress now. Just 4%. America is no longer even considered a full democracy. We are witnessing a total political system failure in America, which is the complete opposite of what our nation's founders had in mind. So I'm going to show you 3 lines that show what's causing this failure, how we can fix it, and what you can do about it. So here's your first line. What I want you to do is take any issue you really care about and picture it on this line. This line comes from a Princeton University study that shows how public opinion influences the laws that Congress does or doesn't pass. They looked at 1,800 public opinion polls over a 20-year period, and we took their data and plotted it in this chart. See this horizontal line? That shows public support for a law amongst average Americans. This vertical line? That shows the likelihood of the public support leading to the passage of a law. When you plot it for the average American, you get a line that looks like this. There's your issue sitting on that line. If there is zero support for a law, there's about a 30% chance that Congress is going to pass it. And if there is 100% support for something, the most popular thing ever, there's still a 30% chance that Congress is going to pass it. So the line is horizontal because no matter how much support there is among average Americans, there's still a 30% chance that Congress is going to pass that law. Princeton determined that the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact on public policy. How in the hell does...
Enhances this is the reason why. They say your votes don't count. Well, you don't assemble. You don't petition. You go into a little box in your local store, all right? Since it's a corporation, we'll call it a store. And you do a vote. Well, they can ignore that, but if you're up in their face in that Capitol building, they cannot ignore you. Now, they may call cops and say, hey, we don't believe in your freedom. We're going to have cops escort you. And the cops don't believe in your freedom, so they're going to escort you out. And then, since the judge don't believe in your freedom, he's going to go ahead and sentence you.
Happen. Consider this. Politicians are spending up to 70% of their time raising funds for re-election after they get into office. Why? Because in order to win a seat in the Senate in some races, you would have to raise $45,000 every single day, 365 days a year for 6 years to raise enough money to win. Now consider that only 0.05% of Americans give more than $10,000 to politics. And then you see why politicians have become completely dependent on the 0.05% of Americans, billionaires and special interest groups, who fund their campaigns. Meanwhile, you've got lobbyists writing our laws and donating to the politicians who pass them. We have a two-party duopoly of Democrats and Republicans that makes it so that independents can't win, while the American people are leaving the major parties in droves.
And I'm going to challenge her on another thing. Also, as well, majority of Congress nowadays in the Senate are attorneys. Well, they lied before they got in office. Why would they change? Right? My representative here in Texas that got changed because the district changed, right? Which should never be. Why? Because we're supposed to have 11,000 congressmen and women. Because it's supposed to be every 30,000 people. All right? So, again, they broke the Constitution way back in the 30s. And we're not going to have more than 436 congressmen and women. Well, that's not what the Constitution says. Okay? We're supposed to have 11,000 today. And if our population keeps growing, then we need another congressman or woman for every 30,000 people. And it's for us to have easy access to them. Okay?
You can see here, nearly half of American voters are now registered independent. And then there's gerrymandering, with politicians drawing the boundaries of their own voting districts into crazy shapes designed to prevent competition. Today, only 14% of House campaigns are actually competitive. 86% of them are not. And we wonder why young people feel that their vote doesn't matter. I've covered a lot here, but it all adds up to this vast ring of influence over our elected leaders. It's a corrupt system in which we, the people, have near zero influence over our own government. And that is sad. That is not the country I feel like I grew up in. But what's worse is that by allowing this to happen, we are causing the failure of the most important issues facing our nation. We're wasting trillions of dollars a year on fraud and abuse in our own government. 1 in 5 American children live in poverty. Our healthcare is the most expensive in the world. We have more people in prison per capita than Russia and China. We're losing jobs to the rest of the world, and we're not even doing enough to keep our air and our water clean for our children. America was founded on the promise of self-governance, but instead we have statistically non-significant impact on public policy.
And just so you guys think outside the box, if the government, if the pharmacy or whatever poisoned you, right, knew that it was giving you cancer and all that kind of stuff, you sue and you win. But which one of the people or the person or the man or woman actually spent time in jail? If I knew that I was poisoning somebody, I would be in jail. Now, why is it corporations, the CEOs and all them, get to escape liability? Oh, well, it's my employee. Boo-hoo-hoo. Wah, wah, wah. All right? We can always blame it on somebody else, corporations. We can always blame it on somebody else, government.
So the question is, how do we unrig this system? I'm obsessed with this idea, not just of unrigging it, but actually fixing it. That's when I met Josh.
This is it. This is the issue behind the issues. If we fix the system, we'll have so much more power to fix everything else. So I spoke to some of the most brilliant people in the country. Constitutional scholar Lawrence Lessig, Zephyr Teachout, and dozens of other constitutional scholars and experts and strategists. They all said the same thing. You could pass a law that would stop political bribery and fix our broken elections. And if you could do that, you could wrest power away from the corrupt establishment and put it back in the hands of the people. Here's how you fix our broken elections.
And by the way, we may need to take this being legal for the corporations to pay for their funding, because the corporations are not supposed to be technically involved. Now, if they go vote, yes, but the corporation party is only supposed to be reserved for the people, not the corporation. And I think the Supreme Court needs to re-look at that.
Gerrymandering with independent redistricting commissions.
Create ranked choice voting so third parties and independents can run and win.
Implement automatic voter registration and vote from home.
And here's how we can crack down on political bribery. Overhaul lobbying and ethics laws and close the revolving door so politicians can't be bribed with high-paying job offers.
Mandate full transparency of political spending so we know who's trying to buy influence.
Give every voter a $50 or $100 tax voucher so politicians spend time fundraising from their constituents, not just that 0.05% that I talked about earlier.
If you could pass even just some of these reforms, you would undo that ring of influence and begin to reinstate we the people as the most important influence over our elected leaders. So we took all of these reforms and put them in a model law and named it the Anti-Corruption Act. And get this, 87% of Americans support making the Anti-Corruption Act the law of the land. Look at the breakdown. 91% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans. It's incredible. Now you might be thinking 9 out of 10 Americans. Surely Congress will pass it. But on this issue, more than any other issue, it's like asking the fox to put a lock on the henhouse. Politicians won in the current system, and they have an incentive not to fix it. So we need to go around Congress. In this case, by passing anti-corruption acts in cities and states all across America. Now, every time I say this, people look at me and say, how does passing city and state laws lead to fixing all of these problems with the federal government?
Can I do this part?
Go for it.
So, first of all, the U.S. Constitution gives states sole control over how elections are run, even federal elections. So when we fix gerrymandering or election laws, that fixes a federal election in each state. That means that by going state by state, we have an immediate impact on how we elect Congress and how we hold them accountable. But there's more, and that brings us to our second line. This line is from a Bloomberg News study. It finds that throughout American history, passing state laws leads to federal victory. Let me show you what I mean. This chart shows the number of states over time that pass laws giving women the right to vote. When it hits the right side of the chart, that's the federal victory. Okay, now I want you to watch the blue line. We're going to do this again with interracial marriage. There were a few states in the Northeast that made it legal decades ago, centuries go by, and we hit this blue line where all of a sudden there's a rush of activity, which leads pretty quickly to federal passage. So here we are again with same-sex marriage. One state, Massachusetts, for many years. A couple decades later, we hit that blue line. A jump in state activity and federal passage. This isn't about these issues. This is about a winning political strategy. The crucial finding in the Bloomberg study is that a key event, often a court decision or a grassroots campaign reaching maturity, triggers a rush of state activity that ultimately leads to a change in federal law. So fixing this problem is possible, but how do we create our trigger moment for this issue? Well, the grassroots campaign from the study, that's Represent Us. We're bringing conservatives and progressives together to pass anti-corruption laws all across America using 3 strategic innovations: right-left coalitions, calling out corruption, and building a movement, a big movement. And I'm going to break them down for you.
Can I do this part?
No.
All right. If you want to see it, then kind of look up. All right. This video was 6 years ago. I don't even know if they're still available, but just ought to get you thinking one way or the other. And standing out on the street and protesting that way is not going to do any good. All it does is government sends officers to violate more of your rights. Okay? You got to do these things in writing, and you got to petition them. And then you guys got to stick to it. Okay? By the way, you don't get just to tell them to pass any laws you want. It's got to be in the bounds of the Constitution. So therefore, you need to know the Constitution first. Okay? Is this law going to trespass upon another man or woman's rights? If it is, then we cannot and want this law to be brought up in the Senate or representatives. Anything. All right? Because once there's trespass, then it leads into government domestic abuse, government battery. Well, we see that just by people going out there protesting. Government battery. Domestic abuse, when them officers, when you're out there protesting. If they sit there and just watch, that's fine. But once they get in